student goal setting tutorial. This is a step-by-step tutorial for guardian and student conversations. When you came in today, we handed you some resources. The first one is a student profile card. We also handed you some MAP reports. MAPS is a type of testing we take here in SAISD district-wide. So all students at all SAISD campuses take the MAP testing. From that testing, the reports we have handed you are a student progress report and a family report. And finally, you have a student-led conference and goal-setting sheet. The first resource you have is a student profile card. This provides historical information about MAPS testing, STAR testing, and TELPAS testing. It also gives the attendance history for your student and predicts some STAR performance goals. So the first thing you're going to notice on the card is it should have your student's name and ID number. You also notice the subject line. So in this case, we could see that this is talking about just math testing on this particular card. You received a card for math testing and another one for reading testing. The next section has to do with MAP testing that we do here in SAISD. Then the next section talks about STAR testing. It has your historical STAR information for all the STAR tests that your student took in the previous years. If your student is a bilingual student or a bilingual denial, they will also have TELPAS testing as mandated by Texas Education Agency or TEA. And you have the attendance information on how your student's attendance was for the past few years. Our goal for attendance should be 96% and above. You'll notice that on the MAP testing section, you have information for beginning of year, which is BOY, middle of year, MOY, and end of year, EOY. You'll also notice that these data points are color-coded with a color band. Those correspond to these percentile ranges. If your child is in the percentile range of 21 or below, they will be in the low category. Orange bands show that your student is performing in the low to average category of 21 to 40th percentile. Yellow bands show that your child is performing at the average level of 41 to 60th percentile. Green bands show that your child is performing at the high average level, which is 61 to 80th percentile. And blue bands show that your student is performing at the high level, which is above 80th percentile. You'll also notice some colored bands under the heading PROF for proficiency. These proficiency bands predict how your student would perform on a STAR test if they're performing that way, the way that they did on the MAPS test. And of course, on the STAR section, which is below, the proficiency shows how they actually performed. So if you see a band that has a red D and M, this shows that your student did not meet grade level requirements. These are grade level requirements or goals set forth by a Texas Education Agency of how your student should be performing at that grade level. APP shows that your student did not meet the grade level requirements, but is approaching or close to meeting those requirements. MTS, a blue MTS, means that your student met the grade level requirements, and a green band of MAS means that your student mastered those grade level requirements. Then, of course, if you look at the STAR data on the bottom, it actually spells out how they performed, whether they met approaches, meets, masters, or did not pass the STAR test. You'll also see another set of color bands under PM. This is progress monitoring, and what that is showing is growth. So from 1 year taking the STAR test to the next year, the student has had 1 year's worth of teaching and learning. So this is measuring, are they showing that they learned 1 year's worth of content based upon their performance? A red limit shows that your student is showing limited or minimal growth. Green expect shows that your student has demonstrated 1 year's growth. They've been in school 1 year since the last STAR test, so it is expected that they would grow 1 year's worth. And a green expect band shows that they have demonstrated that. A blue Excel band shows that your student demonstrated more than 1 year's growth. So even though they have been in school 1 year and are expected to grow 1 year's worth, your student has shown even more growth beyond the 1 year. The next piece of information you have is the student progress report. This is a map data report that shows how your student performed historically, in comparison with students of SAISD, and in comparison with students nationwide. You want to notice that with each time your student took a MAP test, there are 3 color bands associated with it. The first color band is how your student performed. So that is your child, and the number above is the score that your child received on that test during that testing administration. The orange band is to show how the district, how students in SAISD performed overall. So in the same grade level on the same test, how did district-wide students of SAISD perform on that test? And that is the orange band. Finally, you have a yellow band, which again shows how students performed overall across the United States. So for that same test, for that same grade level, across the United States, how did students perform? You want to pay particular attention to these last bands, the ones that are right above the lettering FA19. That is fall 2019, and these are the tests that your students just finished taking within the past few weeks. So this is the most recent data. You'll notice again, your child is the blue bar. So pay attention to the number above the blue bar. And then on the back of your tracker sheet, there is a chart that you can use for comparison. So for example, the student that is on the screen right now scored a 220 on the last administration for math. If I look on the back, on the math section, looking at beginning of year for math, I find 220, and it's closest to 6th grade. So this 6th grade student for math is performing slightly above where he or she should be for the beginning of the year. The other bar you want to pay attention to is at the far right. This is a striped bar that sets a goal for your student. So based upon how your student has been performing over the years, the MAPS testing already sets forth a goal of where they would like to see the student perform by spring 2020. This does not stay the same because once your student takes the test again in winter, based upon how they perform, the goal is going to move, because MAPS testing is not a test where there's a final finish line. MAPS testing is a test where you're chasing a continually moving target. Based upon how well your child does, the target moves to push them to grow more and more.